Okay, guys, today we're going to be talking all about ammunition. Okay, so when you go to the store and just see a box of ammo, obviously the first thing you're going to see is the caliber, which is going to be one of the most important things. Make sure it matches your gun. I'm not going to talk too much about caliber today, so if you want to learn more about caliber, go look at another video I made right there, and it'll explain everything that you need to know. Also, shotgun gauges. Another thing you're going to see is 115 for 9mm is pretty common. That is the bullet weight. So heavier bullets, you're going to see a higher grain count. A lighter bullet, you're going to see a lower grain count. It's going to play with the velocities and stuff like that. For heavier bullets, it'll be going slower. Lighter bullet, you'll be going faster. In today's video, we're not going to get too in-depth on bullet weight, but grains is just another unit of measurement. Another thing you're going to see is this particular one says brass. So that means the casing is made of brass. Other casings are, I have a couple right here. So brass is the one that typically everybody's familiar with. Also, there are some steel casings, and then aluminum. I don't have aluminum one right here, but there are some pros and cons to each one. So brass is your most common, but it's also a little bit more expensive. Steel and aluminum are cheaper, steel being the cheapest, but steel, it doesn't expand and seal as well to the walls of your barrel, and so you'll get more gases kind of leaking back. It shoots a little dirtier, it's a little bit rougher on your barrel. It's really kind of some cheaper ammo, but you know, for just plinking around at the range, it's fine. Also, steel is not very good for reloading. It can kind of be reloaded, but not really. Same with aluminum, it's cheaper, it does expand a little bit better. Also terrible for reloading because it'll crack all the time. If you're not into reloading, then you probably don't care. But again, it's just meant for some cheaper ammo. Brass is typically what you'll get. Another thing is if it looks really shiny, so this casing is really shiny, that's a nickel-plated brass. So the reason they'll plate it with nickel is that nickel has a lower coefficient of friction, so it will slide in and out of your barrel a little bit better and have a little bit better performance. Honestly, I haven't noticed much of a difference in performance, but nickel plate you'll typically see in like self-defense ammunition or high-end ammunition. Okay, another thing to consider is the type of ammunition. So right here I have a self-defense round, which is typically referred to as a hollow point because it has that nice hollow point. And then over here I have just a regular full metal jacket. You'll oftentimes see FMJ. In fact, it probably says on this box somewhere FMJ, which stands for full metal jacket. So it's a jacket around a lead core. Hollow points are typically self-defense round. They're meant to go in and expand rather than just poke straight through a target. There's typically more engineering that's gone into a hollow point. They do cost quite a bit more. So into our targets, you have a couple main ones. So I mentioned cast rounds. Cast is literally, it's typically hobbyists. You can buy cast rounds. You'll rarely see cast rounds at the store unless it's for an old cowboy round or something like that. But this is an example of one. So it's a blue powder coat on just lead. And then there's also a total metal jacket. If you're just going, a total metal jacket is so rather than just a FMJ on top, and then you can see the lead core on the bottom, it's completely covered. So FMJ, TMJ, cast. FMJ is your most common, what you're going to find in range ammo. Okay, sometimes you'll see on self-defense ammunition, so the hollow points, you'll see plus P. Well, the plus P stands for pretty much plus power, plus oomph. It's a little bit of a faster, more potent round. Meant for self-defense, so it gives the projectile a little bit more energy, a little bit more knockdown power, a little bit more stopping power. I don't mind it. I've shot it. It's fine, but make sure whenever you're getting self-defense ammunition, you run some of it through your gun to make sure you're not going to have issues with your particular gun. So then we have subsonic and supersonic. Basically, subsonic is below the speed of sound, so about 1100 feet per second, and doesn't have that sonic crack. So if you're shooting through a suppressor, it's really nice because it's really quiet. Not quite Hollywood quiet, but about as close as you're going to get in the real life. Supersonic is going faster than the speed of sound, so it'll have less bullet drop at long range if you're trying to shoot really long ranges. So typically rifles are supersonic, not always if you're shooting a round that's designed to be suppressed, but and handgun rounds, it kind of depends whether they're super or subsonic. If it doesn't say, you can always go ask a clerk or whatever whether it's super or subsonic. Unless you're shooting through a suppressor, you honestly really don't care, especially for training ammo. Okay, so the next one we have centerfire and rimfire ammunition. Okay, so centerfire ammunition, you see a little bit of a circular primer there in the back, and so the firing pin hits right on that. A rimfire, I actually don't have one down here right now. I'm too lazy to go get one, but it has a rim, and then instead of hitting the middle, there's actually an explosive in the rim, and it hits the very edge. So like a 22, you know, the cheap round, that's a rimfire. Centerfire, it hits that primer. So rimfire is cheaper to manufacture, cheaper to shoot, but it's not as reliable. So you'll pretty much never see rimfire used for anything serious, or home defense, military, anything like that. It's mostly just for plinking around because it's cheap to shoot. Okay, next we have rifle and pistol ammunition. So pistol ammunition, like 9mm, 45, whatever, those go in pistols. Rifles ammunition is going to be much bigger, something like this. So this is a steel-cased centerfire 55 grain 223 round. So this is meant for a rifle. It's pretty much just a lot bigger and going to go a lot faster. Meant to be shot out of a rifle. This is meant to be shot out of a pistol. Okay, with shotgun shells, again, refer to my caliber/gauge video for different gauges. But they essentially make these in 3 primary different types: birdshot, buckshot, and slugs. So birdshots are itty-bitty BBs meant for birds, imagine that, or clay pigeons. Buckshot is made of bigger pellets meant for bucks. No, just kidding. It's actually really not meant for bucks. I wouldn't shoot a deer with it. It's kind of confusing. It's meant for kind of medium-ish game. And then you have a slug, which is just a big old fat chunk of copper flying down your shotgun. And that you could actually use for a buck, I suppose, if you wanted to. Okay, so we're going to talk about materials that projectiles are made of. So the most common is lead. Lead shot out of a shotgun, a lead projectile. Other common ones are copper or a copper zinc alloy. So those are lead-free ammunition. They typically cost a little bit more, but in some areas where you're hunting with a rifle, you need lead-free ammunition, and that's what it's going to be made out of. Other things for shotgun shells, you'll often see steel shot instead of lead. Again, depending on where you're hunting, you might have to use steel instead of lead. Typically for range ammunition, you're just going to see lead exclusively with some sort of a copper or other form of jacket. There are some fancy rounds typically used by the military and for tanks that are made out of like tungsten or depleted uranium, but you'll never buy any of those, so that's a discussion for another day. Okay guys, that is it for this video. Even as I was saying things, I was like, well, there's this exception here, there's, you know, this, and why would you want this or the other? This was just a really high-level basic introduction to different types of ammunition. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments from all y'all experienced guys being like, oh, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this. I didn't want to be here for 30 minutes for people who are kind of getting into it. So if you have any other comments, please put them in the comments below. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.